Welcome, 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 everybody. I'm Selena Rezvani, and you're joining Women in Work Culture. We're back after a little holiday pause last week, and this is a live stream all about boosting women's leadership and creating those women-forward workplaces, because it's about time. I'm so excited today to feature my friend and colleague, Tiffany O'Donnell, CEO of Women Lead Change. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you so much, Selena. I'm so pumped up after that fun opener.
Good. That's the idea. That's exactly the idea.
That was great.
Well, Tiffany, I think you're the perfect person to be talking to us about this really juicy topic today, which is kind of retiring some of the negative tropes, the stereotypes around mean girl type behavior, and instead focusing on the positive, some of the ways we as women can amplify other women, right? I know that's a huge piece of your work. I also want to welcome all of our friends joining us and ask you to drop us a note. Let us know where in the world you're joining from. I already see Anissa in Tampa Bay, Veronisha in Oakland, California, and Catherine in Austin, Texas. Welcome. So Tiffany, before we dive into our juicy topic, let me butter your bread just for a moment, because you have such a cool background and such great work you're doing with impact. Let me share with everybody else, as CEO of Women Lead Change, under Tiffany's leadership, she's really making a huge impact to advance women through everything from, leadership development programs, the conference series, which I was just saying is next level and so impressive, to even doing really kind of, even different things like funding really critical research in this area. I know you've brought CEOs together to discuss gender inclusion. So love all the work you're doing. On top of that, Tiffany hosts a podcast through Women Lead Change called Own It, which love that message.
Thank you.
And if you're ready for this, everybody, on top of all of that, she is currently training for her private pilot's certificate. Pretty fierce.
Getting there.
Pretty fierce. I get the feeling about you. You're not too afraid of being daring and going for it.
No, I have to be intentional about it, though. I do need to be intentional about it.
I'm
a work in progress.
Yes. I think you're getting a lot of, thumbs up for that and relating.
Oh, thanks, everybody.
And Valerine from Flower Mound, Texas. Welcome. Michelle from Philly suburbs. All of you, if you have questions as we go for Tiffany, please send them to us as it relates to showing up for other women, what we're going to dive into today. So Tiffany, we didn't get into all of your really cool, impressive background, but I know you've worked, in everything spanning marketing to operations to a huge journalism career, and now running this powerful women's organization. What kind of initially got you excited to focus on advancing women specifically?
Selena, I'm one of those people that I feel so lucky, and that I can say I feel like, honestly, everything I've done in my life really led me to this spot. Between the career in journalism to having two daughters and being a volunteer in our community for one of the organizations I was so passionate about was an organization then called Iowa Women Lead Change, based in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. So this is how I initially I came to this organization as a woman in the workplace. That really wanted community. And what I found was a complete paradigm shift. And it happened to be when I was volunteering for the organization, I was interviewing at the time Martha Stewart. She was a guest at one of the marquee conferences. Women Lead Change is so known for their conferences. I went there as a news anchor to moderate the conversation. So that was really how I got in the door. And during that conversation, she talked about writing her first cookbook, that entertaining, the blue cookbook that I think we've all seen on, our mom's shelves and now our own. She wrote that when she was 42 years old. And
Wow.
I think at the time I was probably 43 or 44 and just, kind of okay in my career, content, but really not jazzed about it, satisfied, but not energized.
Mm-hmm.
And to hear that this woman, arguably created the lifestyle industry with that book at 42 years old, I thought, wow, maybe there is something else out for me. And out there. And that was the paradigm shift that I talk about. I started to notice other people who had done that and who had re-careered. And then I just kept volunteering with the group. And like I said, all of my experience and passion all led me to this amazing spot.
I love that here you are, a working woman yourself, right? You volunteered, you have daughters, like from all perspectives, it's beautiful how this came together and kind of integrated and married your strengths, which is really awesome. I want to kind of get right into the main course of this, which is, I have to tell you, when I do sessions on being a strong self-advocate with women, or I do a interrupting gender bias session, always there is that little hand that goes up in the back of the room that says, what about women not supporting women?
Yeah. Yeah.
I get
it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it pains me to hear, but clearly there's some felt experience that some people are having around this and feeling not supported by their colleagues. Where do you think this stereotype kind of comes from? Why do you think this exists?
I think it's a complex question, but I will just tell you at a high level, it's just the scarcity of position. I was talking to an African-American male colleague of mine who said he felt the same thing. The person who was the toughest on him coming up was another African-American male. And I think that, anytime you've got a marginalized community and you recognize there are so few spots, it gets competitive. And I think, that's the high level conversation that, I think people are very protective of their space and how they got there. And that can come across as a queen bee, or as a woman not supporting other women. And again, which makes the work that we do in terms of gender balance and seeing more women in these leadership positions, I truly believe that the more opportunities there are, a lot of that will fade away, because I do see that scarcity as a reason behind some of that.
Yeah, and it's kind of feels like all the more business case to have more than one woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that C-suite or in the management team, right? Because it is a lot of pressure, and you do feel like the only, whether that's, race, gender, or another thing. So, all the more support, I think, that when you see many and not just, a single person, there's less of a scarcity message, that there's
Right.
only so much to go around.
Right.
Well, I think we know what we want to avoid, which is that scarcity mindset, flipping it to the positive. What do you think are some of the ways we can be these good wing women to our female colleagues?
And I love that. I love that term, wing woman. That's so great. And I think I have quite a few of them myself. And I'll tell you, here's how I look at it. Those friends of ours in the hospitality industry will understand this. You've got kind of front of the house and the back of the house. So if I could talk about, front of the house, being a good wing woman, I think these are the public things we do to lift up our female colleagues and teammates, whether it's reinforcing a great idea that we hear in a meeting, publicly calling out, incredible character and work ethic, sharing with colleagues and fellow leaders about the great work that's being done. Anytime you can publicly reinforce great work, great behavior, great character, I think that's pretty fantastic. I think about, word got back to me about a friend that made a compliment to another executive director of an organization. And I can't tell you how powerful that was. And I think that had a lot to do with me getting a seat at the table with this individual because of those words that she shared with him publicly. So you can't underestimate the power of the public reinforcement of a female colleague's character. But I also submit, we know this with women, that we are often our own biggest barrier. Confidence is an issue that a lot of us struggle with, frankly. I mean, I'll raise my hand and say, I turned this job down twice because I'd never been a CEO before. We just do that. I wanted to make sure I knew how to do everything before I did it. So confidence, we need to build our confidence in many ways. And this is where I talk about the back of the house, because I talk about the work that we do as a wing woman with our friend one-on-one. When we hear that negative self-talk coming out, it's your wing woman that's going to say, what? Is that how you really see it? Like, let's reframe that, because that's not how I see you.
Yeah.
It's that building up. It's that, I think about even that Martha Stewart example I gave you, in this room of 1,200 people watching Martha Stewart. I'd never been this involved in this way with this organization. I was very nervous, and a wing woman of mine back there pulled me aside and she said, good luck. This is a game changer. You've got this. Game changer, and you've got this. That's a private conversation that happened, but my confidence level rose. I stood up a little more straight. So I don't think you can also underestimate the work we do for our wing women in private and one-on-one, because that may actually reap exponential dividends. You build a person up, who knows what they're capable of once they get out there.
That's huge. And it's such a great tip for those people who, I don't know, I know some people who kind of aren't as comfortable being the outward praiser or really talking someone up. They wouldn't even do it about themselves, their best friend, anyone. This little private moment is something you can do to lift another woman up that can have a game-changing effect, right?
I believe it.
I'll never forget in my own career, just having a mentor, a woman I really looked up to with a lot more experience than me as a consultant, saying to me one day, Selena, why don't you give the big executive presentation? And it was like, what? That is preposterous, right? And then it slowly became exciting, and maybe it's not so crazy. And I think I can do this, but all because of that seed she planted in me. That I think you can do more. I think you can do more.
We can all do it. And we're talking about wing women, but certainly wing men as well.
Yeah.
Helping people see the potential in themselves and not being afraid, to call out the negative self-talk when you hear it. You got to be able to point it out and reframe it for them.
I really love that. I think that's great. And I think one of my own pieces of work I've had to do too is kind of check my own biases. I remember starting a job and hearing a woman self-promote in a very healthy way, but from my own conditioning of, women being modest and tone it down, don't be a braggart, right? I kind of had a moment of judgment. And I had to talk myself out of that and say, check your own bias, lady, because she's doing a normal thing here.
Selena, you're so right. You are so, I'm so grateful for those remarks. And that is being self-aware, and we all have it. And anybody who says they don't have these internal biases is lying, or they just don't know it yet. But good for you, because that's important.
Well, right. Strong messages we get, about what it means to be a woman, and I think we're evolving that, which is exciting. I want to talk a little bit, have some story time about a time in your own career where, you had your wing woman experience, maybe where a woman stepped in and took an action that made an impact for you.
I have to go back to, my transition, from news anchor to CEO. I mean, how non-traditional, unexpected, and I still call myself an unlikely CEO. That happens to be my position, but more than 20 years in a career, I just never imagined that I could do anything else or would do anything else for that matter. And to have somebody say, we think that you should be part of our succession plan the CEO and co-founder was wanting to retire. They wanted to bring me in as a chief operating officer initially. Which again, how random does that sound to someone who's, like I said, been in a career for a long time and not even looking? And I said no. I actually said no a couple of times, which is just such a tragedy to me as I look at, I feel like I said, everything I've done in my life has led me to this spot. And I really enjoyed myself, and I feel like I'm having an impact. And what a shame to have missed out of that because I was afraid, which at the end of the day, that's all that was. That's all that was fear. And so luckily I had some really smart people who kind of talked me through, I'm one of those people that I went from being, this is just like the best opportunity ever, to B, I'm going to meet amazing people that I never imagined, down to E and F, I've never done this before, down to, XYZ, I'm going to be the one that brings the place down. I mean, I literally went from A to Z in about a 10-minute period. And it was my husband who finally said, how did we go from A to, how did that happen so quickly? And then he had this really amazing wisdom and said, I've got something, you're going to want to write this down because it's so important. And they said, what? He goes, so it fails. Guess what? The sun comes up tomorrow. And I was like, okay, radical idea. I failed at something and the sun comes up again tomorrow. And I say all of that because there was a woman on the other side of that. And that was the woman that tapped me on the shoulder and said, no, I think you'd be really great at this. And then here are the magic words she then said to me. She said, you're going to feel like you're jumping off a cliff, but it's really a curb.
Wow.
You're going to feel like you're jumping off a cliff and it's really, and then I think the most important part of all for someone like me, and I think probably some people listening to this, she looked at me dead in the eye and said, I will not let you fail.
Oh my goodness.
I get goosebumps saying it again. That was Diane Ramsey. That was the co-founder. And she understood where I was coming from. She believed in me in that much. And I knew that she was going to be there, and took that to heart. And the rest, as they say, is history 5 years later. But it was having someone like that who I respected and admired so well to really, put her reputation, her social, her political capital all on the line for me. And I didn't want to disappoint her. And I certainly didn't want to, disappoint the organization. And that's how it worked. But she was really the one.
You are getting so much love for that. I think that hit all of us like a ton of bricks in the best way. How can we each be a Diane for somebody, right? And say, I won't let you fail.
I won't let you fail.
I see you're afraid, and I get that you're afraid, but it's a curb. What a gorgeous kind of thing for all of us to tattoo on our minds. I love that. And I want to ask you a quick question, Tiffany. You told the Martha Stewart story, but I've heard you tell this story and I adore it. Will you tell them the piece before that about the great ways you were a good self-advocate in terms of how you got that Martha gig?
Oh, yeah. Well, our conferences are an investment. I mean, it's a time investment as well as a financial investment. And I worked for a television station at the time, and I didn't have an official leadership role. I was the main anchor, which is, is leadership in a lot of different ways, but nothing really official. And so when I went to my organization and said, I really want to go to this, it's a significant investment of time and money. And the organization said, no, which, yeah. That's never a good idea. But anyway, they said no, right? Boo, boo. They said, no, we don't understand why this would, really benefit you or us, frankly. And so that's when I got clever. And I thought, I'm going to call the CEO. I'd never met her before. That was Diane, the Diane, as I call her. I called her and said, hey, any chance that you need some media coverage? I could be there with a camera and cover the event. I know, kind of inched my way in for free. And she just politely said, actually, we don't have any media sponsors, and we're okay. We're going to get coverage from everybody. So I appreciate the offer, but no thanks. So that was the first phone call. And then serendipitously, the person who was supposed to moderate that conversation ended up having a conflict. And so about a month out is when she was like, well, I'm going to call that gal who called me before. And that was really, that's just the power of a network. And that's Diane too. Again, I think a lesson for all of us. the good work that comes out of having a really strong network, and
Mm.
really being intentional about everyone who's in your network, from the most powerful to maybe, the news anchor who happened to reach out. I certainly was not one of the most important people in her network, but she held on to my number, and I'll be forever grateful. So I literally just wiggled my way in, and then kept wiggling, and said at the next conference, how about if I do some backstage interviews? And
Mm.
the station was okay with that, because I was able to get some content for the station. And it was actually a conversation post event, where we were looking at different ways to generate revenue for the organization away from just the conferences, via webcasts and things like that. That's when she saw the potential for something else in me. So again, it was hanging on to that. We say once we get our claws in, yet women lead change. We don't let them out. And it was that. And it was from those conversations that led me to even be an option for this job.
So awesome. It's the power of a Diane in your life, but I think it's also a power in your case, Tiffany, of asking. You asked, and one of the things we talk about on this show is don't tell yourself no before they do.
Great point. Great point.
And you
Yeah.
did that. So I just wanted to fully acknowledge you asked, and some people, might ruminate. There's a lot of us ruminators, overthinkers, who might say, oh, what if they say no? I'm not sure. And I just think that was such an awesome first step that had a huge impact, it sounds like, on your path forward.
Thank you. And again, so they say no. I'll go back to my husband's sage advice. The sun comes up tomorrow. They say no. Oh, well, the sun comes up tomorrow. It's all good.
Tiffany, we have a great question from Venetia, who asked a really interesting question. I wonder your thoughts. She said, what about when you have a boss who feels competitive with you? Do you have any thoughts about managing that relationship?
It's tough. It's tough, Venetia. I'll just acknowledge that out of the chute. The boss is still the boss. And I've had bosses in my lifetime that I knew I just had to outlast. I mean, I knew that they would eventually weren't going to be there. I just had to make sure they didn't fire me first. And I will say, I have had some success in my life with supporting those bosses in a way that, they see unselfish behavior on your part to make them look better. Do your part to make them look better, anticipate what they're going to need to make them look better. And then I think that can also foster a new trust. If it truly is unselfish, I mean, if you really are helping them unselfishly to be better and to make them look good, and then if you're lucky, they might move on. But by the same token too, I think there becomes a new trust, and you never know, maybe even a new relationship out of that.
That's a great kind of, I think, fresh take on that issue, which is change the dynamic a little, maybe do the counterintuitive thing.
Absolutely.
And make them look good.
Right.
I want to get back to, for a minute, some of your wonderful tips around elevating other women. And I want to talk specifically, we got some into, how to give them confidence just between you and them. But let's imagine we aren't in the room. Are there other things that come to mind when you think about promoting them or helping elevate their status? They're not in the room. What could you do? Maybe they're not the person who's seen, like their competence isn't obvious to everyone. Are there things you think we could be doing, in addition to kind of speaking well of them?
I appreciate that question. And I think it's especially relevant in this time of virtualness, because I do worry about women and visibility. While this creates a flexible workplace for us, I do have concerns about visibility in terms of ascending to leadership positions and being seen, to your point. I think I think you have to share the good work, look for opportunities to point out great responsibility, great work ethic. If there is a project where someone is anticipating your needs, like Venetia mentioned, I have this colleague, Venetia, and oh my gosh, it's like she reads my mind, and creates this, this great outcomes, on a personal as well as professional level. find ways, and I think it's important to not do this with everyone. I think to identify people that you really are willing to put your social capital on the line for, and really do the work for them. So when you have an opportunity, they're the ones that you talk about, as opposed to kind of diluting the message. If you're somebody who always says great things about everyone, sometimes that can dilute it. So maybe zero in on, one or two people that you really do truly see potential and want to support. But I don't know how I think in the social media world too, there's ways to share content, and you might need to encourage, some people to write more publicly in blogs, or share the articles that they share on LinkedIn, just to kind of get their name, out there in the ether. There are ways to do that without having them be in the room.
I love that. It's like these whisper networks. And I think your point, I haven't heard somebody else say that and articulate that nuance, that, in order for your words to have weight, you can't be saying this about every person,
Right.
you
Agreed.
mentor, or every person. So really picking and choosing, I think that's brilliant. And you're getting lots of love for these pointers and great nuggets. I want to ask something around being a bit critical, right? With women sometimes being hard on themselves, number one, but also, part of this old trope can be that we can be hard on each other. We just turn on social media, and many of us look at that woman on Instagram and say, like, you've got this Instagram perfect life. You must have it all figured out. And it can cause us to be critical of ourselves, or even of her. Is there any mindset shift you'd like to see women make, to lessen that criticism, whether it's of ourselves or someone else?
I think we just need to get real. Just get real about people. First of all, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody does that. And I think, once you acknowledge we're all just navigating, and again, I feel COVID was this opportunity for us all to be a bit vulnerable and to acknowledge imperfection is okay. I feel like this is a real time of grace, and I hope we can continue it. I mean, I used to, in my old life, one of the jobs I had was a Children's Miracle Network event, and you would meet parents who had lost children, or who had terminally ill children. And I will tell you, you will never get a closer relationship in a shorter amount of time than when you're talking to a parent who's really like walking through hell or was been to hell. There was a realness and a rawness there, and an authenticity. They had nothing to prove. They weren't trying to be anything else. I hope that we can just accelerate our authenticity with each other, and acknowledge that no matter what they look like on social media, we're all battling something. There is no perfect. And I'm just gonna, Rachel Hollis was a speaker at one of our events last year. Rachel has a huge social media following, and I think people would often look to Rachel as this, great example of, and she's a really interesting, successful human, and went through something, surprised all of us on Instagram, and talked about getting a divorce from her husband, who we felt that we'd gotten to know on Instagram so well. This was a woman that we lifted up for so long, and we really saw a different side. And I think if we can all know that we're all, no matter what's out there, let's just be real. Just be real. Everyone's battling something.
Yes.
It's the truth. It's the truth.
Beautiful. Not only to extend that grace to yourself and other women, but like, how about talking about the struggles? I have gotten so much appreciation and, frankly, confidence from hearing other women who I thought, there's no way they've been told no. There's no way they've fell on their face and made a fool of them, of themselves. There's no way they've been rejected. Having them tell those difficult, frustrating stories, those crises, has made all the difference to me, and made me think, okay, maybe I can keep on. So that's something I think all of us can do,
I agree. And to hear you say that, I mean, even just you saying that, being vulnerable, it's powerful. And I think once we figure out that's who we all are, we've all got it. And anybody who acts like they don't is lying.
Right.
I mean,
Right. And don't kind of overvalue what they bring or the life they're living and diminish the life you're living and the value you bring, because that's easy to do sometimes with the little Instagram goggles on, right? They're perfect. I'm down here.
Oh, I
So
love that. Don't overvalue that and don't undervalue what you have.
release it, right?
So
I
great.
want
So
to
great.
ask you one more question, Tiffany. I'm so loving this conversation, and I feel like maybe there's got to be a part two. But you've got two daughters, as you've said. You're raising your own leaders, right? What do you want to see as you look at the next generation of women? When you look at them, how would you like to see women showing up and supporting other women as we go forward?
I'd like it just to be normalized, that it's equal across the board. There's a part of me that while I jump up and down when I hear we had an all-female spacewalk, then my then 15-year-old daughter walks in the room and says, wait, that's never happened before.
Right.
So then I'm pointing out that hasn't happened before, which I hate. I just look forward to equity across the board, and equity being normalized, if that makes sense. And I do feel like, again, shiny linings in COVID. We've got partners now at home. We've got women in healthcare working, and husbands, now walking past laundry bins, literally saying, wow, if I don't fold that, she's going to have to do that later.
Yeah.
There is this sort of reckoning, and I'm just hopeful, because I do think culturally, for women to be able to ascend to these levels of leadership we want in equal parts, we've got to have partners at home and partners in life that allow us to do that. And that's a cultural shift. So that's just my hope, that, they're going to live in a world where this isn't as much of a conversation as it is today.
That's so beautiful. Put us both out of work, Tiffany.
Yes, yes.
Right? I love it.
I'm
Well,
good with it.
I know. I wrote down a quote from Lizzo. Maybe your daughters will like this, because it reminded me of our conversation today. If I'm shining, everybody gonna shine.
Oh, I
And I
love
think
that.
that's so true about women pulling other women up. Tiffany, I'm so proud to know you. You're so good at telling the story of women supporting other women. And you're inspiring so many women, not just through your own kind of fearlessness and pushing through your own, barriers, but you're also prompting companies to do more for women. And so
Wow.
we're so grateful to you. We need your message, and keep going
Thank you.
because we love it.
Thank you. It's my privilege to be here, Selena. I appreciate the opportunity. And thanks for all that you're doing every day
Oh,
to advance
thank
women
you.
leaders.
Thank you. It's my joy and my passion. All of you can check out links to Tiffany, her website, her articles, her awesome podcast that you should absolutely check out. So look for those in the show notes. And please stay in touch with me too. You can check out my LinkedIn learning courses, join my newsletter tribe, and follow me here on LinkedIn if you're not. I want to say thanks to our whole community for joining today, to the wonderful Tiffany. Stay
Thank you.
healthy, stay well, and lead on.
Thank you so much.